On everyone? Cam from Fight Octave here, and today I'm with Lucas Rosa. Let's go.
What's
The
up? What's
brother
up,
of
Rosie?
Charles Rosa. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Oh, of course, of course. Super happy to have be on. And yeah, just got back from training, and ready to go train right after this too. So
Nice.
nice little
So
creep.
in the four fights you've had, you've won all of
Yeah.
them in the first round. Do you feel
Yeah.
like you've had much difficulty yet? And like, do you think as fights will go on, do you put more pressure on your opponents?
Yeah. So like, I think one of the things too is like, that's part of why I think also I had so much experience as an amateur was to really be prepared when it came time to go pro. And I had a in a sense, like in terms of time, it was a short amateur career because it was only 2 years, but I got so much experience out of that. I think I had 17 or 18 fights. Like eight of them were kickboxing, or maybe nine of them were kickboxing. I fought like four or five titles, and yeah, it was a really good experience for me to go through all that and be tested. And so now I think now that I've gotten to this level, I realize like what works and what doesn't, and what things I have to hyper focus on. And one of those things I think that helped me a lot was just like figuring out that I needed to do a lot more privates with a lot of like my high level coaches like Charles McCarthy, like Matt Waggy, like obviously my older brother Charles. And I've started training a little bit more at MMA science with Roger Carl, who's an elite striker, and Billy Patton, who's Philly style boxing, and Rami Hamed, who's like a more of a flowy style of Lebanese striking. And yeah, so it's I've been working with like really elite people, and I think that's what's sort of allowed me to go into these fights prepared and ready to finish people. So
Nice. Well, you're 4-0. Your last
yeah,
win was by TKO. How did it
yeah.
feel to get your first pro KO slash TKO?
It was good. I honestly, part of it was like, I almost wish I had a little bit more time on the feet because, like I said, I've been focusing a lot on my submission game with Charles McCarthy. He told me like after we had a few amateur fights that, they were good fights. I won them, but they were all like decisions in a row. Even my title fight, I went to Alabama and fought the best guy from Alabama in Birmingham in his city. And, it was run around that should have been 10-8, and that I probably should have finished him with a TKO in the second round. And so, he kind of really wanted me to focus more on finishing ability. And so I got really good at, having a whole submission series through him. And, I've always loved jujitsu, but I really think I elevated it to the kind of violent chainsaw Charles McCarthy style of jujitsu finishing. And so after I'd got three of those in a row, I was kind of like, not that you can always pick and choose how you win, but I was trying to sort of listen to my coaches who said, "Hey, try to get some experience time on the feet if you can. Like make sure." My brother kept telling me like see everything, really, have vision when it comes to this sort of thing because that's what you'll need in later fights. And so lo and behold, the first thing the kid did was throw this crazy overhand. And because I saw everything, I just stepped back, stepped out of the way, like used some of my footwork to hit a 1-2, kneed him up to the chin, and right then he just grabbed onto me and like almost pulled me into his guard. So my plan was to try to stay on the feet and really like try to like really KO him. But once he pulled me into guard, I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna have to go savage TKO here. So, I'm not gonna like give up position just to try to, you know, like win in a way that I feel like is more impressive or something. Like when I go in there, I'm just trying to kill. So yeah.
So your three fights before that were all by submission.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
feel like your advantage is in the ground game?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of people seem to fear, like before I went pro, I think a lot of people just feared my wrestling. And I mean, I'm good at wrestling. I was a state champion wrestler before I did rugby in college. Was a rugby captain in college. I was a state champion, two-time captain in wrestling. But um, I would say like one of my favorite things is jujitsu. I just like it's like sounds messed up in a way, but I like the feeling of like like being able to submit somebody. And and yeah, I mean that's a part of the game that I like training a lot, I guess. And to me, I think it's one of the more like intellectual aspects. You have to really think through and for me, I have to like drill until it becomes muscle memory. And once things start to become muscle memory, I feel like you like can blend things together in such a really unique way to have such a unique grappling game. And yeah, I mean, so to me, that's the part of jujitsu and wrestling that I like, that it kind of requires that sort of almost creativity with it. But like I'm not trying to have a stalling, like boring grappling style game. Mine is trying to be like violent as heck. But and that's again like I was undefeated as a kickboxer though, so I won't say that it's like the advantage. Like I have a weakness or anything. Like I'm always trying to work on my striking and get it on par with the rest of my game. I never want to feel like I have any holes. And I like when people underestimate certain aspects of my game, because then they find out.
So your last fight was on Combat FC,
Yep.
and the fight before that was on CES. Do you have any plans to fight soon?
Yeah. So like I'm always trying to stay very active. Honestly. I just love to fight, and I love that I as an amateur I was one of the most active fighters in the country. Now as a pro, I'm pretty sure I had, 4 fights in 4 months. I don't know if that's ever been done. Or I mean, I'm sure it has back in the old days where they had tournaments like 3 fights in a day. But, in the more modern era, I don't know, like, how often people have started their career like that. Like I had 2 fights in May and then one in August with CES, as you mentioned. And then the last one was with Combat FC. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to look for different promotions. I don't want to like, call out any certain promotions right now, because I know promotions get sometimes a little like territorial of each other and stuff. So, but I will say yes, I'm very much looking. I'm trying to fight again in November. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm trying to fight in November. So yeah, I mean there's different potentials. Like I could go back up in the Northeast. I think, but I think my coaches also want to see if they can test me against some of the South Florida fighters, because that I feel like there is such a good, you know, MMA culture in South Florida. Like to me, that's why I moved down here from the Northeast, is because I don't like the atmosphere of South Florida better. Honestly, like I'm more introverted. I don't go out partying and like the SoFlo vibe, but I like it down here because it's sort of the mecca of MMA. That like everywhere you turn, there's really really high level people and high level gyms, and that's why I moved down here. So I think fighting here would be really special as a pro, because it's I did that pretty much my entire amateur career, and that's how you sort of test your mettle. So
In your last fight with Combat FC, it was kind of like a quick turnaround. How was the training camp for that fight, and how was the weight cut?
So yeah, the weight cuts have not been bad, honestly, because my last three, the opponents didn't really want to cut down to what I normally cut down to. So, I mean, honestly, I found out about it. I was at, I was with my fiance actually when I found out about the fight. I was in Canada, up in Nova Scotia, this will sound crazy, but a sports ethics conference. She's like a Gabriella Halsey. She's like a PhD. She's getting her PhD in philosophy, and so I just went up there because I used to study philosophy as well. I had a Watson fellowship that was actually philosophy based, right before I started becoming an MMA fighter, and so it was cool to kind of be up there and and in the middle of like talking to all these like PhD people about sports ethics things. I got a call saying, hey, like this might be an option here, and I'm always searching for opponents. So yeah, but it was kind of a quick turnaround. But I've had quicker. I've like from my first to my second fight actually was only was something that I kind of like forced into existence, and there was a little bit more pressure because of how I forced it. But it was on like literally 4 days notice. And yeah, I mean, like but that's the thing. If you're a fighter, you got to be ready to fight anytime. And with me, this is how what I've dedicated my life to. I'm obsessed with it. So like when those opportunities come, you take them no matter what. So yeah, I didn't feel bad about the weight cuts though, because those honestly, like to me, those are just that's just a part of it. Like I know people complain about cutting weight, and I would say it is definitely one of the hardest parts of the whole sport. But uh, in a sense, I think it's also like has something to do with your discipline in a way, like how committed are you to it? How meticulous are you about like, you know, how you my boxing coach always says we're gonna go see how they're living, like when you go into a fight. And that's kind of, I think, part of it is like the weight cut is like, how you're living every day, how your process of like eating and dieting and taking care of your body. And it's just one small component, but yeah, I'm always on track for that. Like even for the fight that was on 4 days notice, I told them, I'm like, hey, I'll fight at 145, just like you have to let me know. And they said, no, this guy wants to fight you at 160. And the fight after that was at 150 catch weight, and the next fight was at lightweight at 155. So I fought up and down, and now I think I'm rated on Tapology as a 155er when I'm like, all right, well, like I'm actually a featherweight. So it's pretty interesting, I guess. But I guess that just comes with the territory of being a any time, any place kind of fighter.
Yep. I mean, within all the chaos, within all the fights and the weight cuts and everything in between, how has Charles helped you build your MMA career, and how has he been an inspiration for you?
Oh yeah, Charles is amazing. He's I think one of the things with Charles is like not only, especially in the beginning, I would say not only did he was never the reason I wanted to do MMA. I think we have very different personalities and are very different people, like for sure. And so he was never really the reason I wanted to do MMA. Like I always knew in my heart that I wanted to pursue it. Like, and to me, it was always very consistent with who I was as an academic and intellectual. But like I would say the thing he did show me was what was possible. Like he inspired me in the sense of like, hey, like this is what can be accomplished if because I don't think I would have ever considered it as like a super realistic possibility. Like I always thought to myself I was, like gonna be great somehow, but I didn't quite know how I would reach that point. And I think seeing him go through it and be 10 years older than me and have that whole blueprint, like in a way it takes away such the nerves because like, oh, this is possible, like, and takes away a lot of those like that lingering doubt, and there's always fear when you walk into a fight no matter what, but I think like knowing that he's been through it helps you a lot. And I think even as a coach, like he's really really high level because I think he gets to the heart of like the MMA IQ type of things. It's not just about, oh, drilling this technique or like knowing what to do in this situation. It's also about knowing what the optics are and like the situational awareness in different parts of the fight, like when to get your back to the cage, when you have to stand up, whether you want to make it look violent or actually be violent. So he knows a lot about that kind of thing. And I think on top of that, we have pretty much like I get confused for him sometimes, which I take offense to, and he takes offense to. But 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 we have pretty similar body types. Like so, I think a lot of the things that work for him and didn't work for him and things that he struggled with coming up, he sees me do, but only a little bit worse than he does now. So he kind of can correct it very easily. And sometimes he says, even watching me, he'll see some of his own mistakes and be able to correct them on himself. Because he says, he's like, you do it, but you do it much worse than I do. And I was like, okay, well. So it's funny. It's a good relationship. He's my older brother. He's like 10 years older than me. So it's good to have. It's almost like that exact generation above me, a decade older, of like, this is sort of the path. And he's a great coach and a great brother. And so yeah, it's it's something really special to have that. I think not it's a very lonely sport, and I won't say like having your brother in it makes it much less lonely because it is still a lonely sport. It's just you in the cage there, but I mean having him definitely helps.
On the CES fight night at Foxwoods, when Charles was the main event and you were on that card as well, how amazing was that, like, as an experience?
Oh, I mean, that was, I mean, Charles even said it. He's like, man, he's like, I would take some of those that CES fight over like most of my UFC fights, like most of my UFC wins even. Like it was just such a special experience. I don't know, like because I think it was both because we both fight so actively. I think when we always are fighting up in the Northeast, I almost feel bad. Like it's every like two months to 1 month that one of us is fighting and trying to sell tickets and get people to go. And I know it's an entertaining thing for people to come to, but I always feel bad when it's my hometown friends and they're like, "Oh, how much are the tickets?" And I'm like, I can't like help everyone, and like even if they're family. But so it's it is interesting when it was like me and him, you knew for sure that like everyone who knew us was like, okay, it's both of them, like we're all coming down. So it was and it's such a great venue, Foxwoods is. So it's like I think the biggest resort casino on the entire continent. I think they said it's the third biggest in the world. So just to be like and it was streamed on, I got to say I was on TV on like Roku channel 234, and to share that sort of platform and share it with my brother and have us both win in the first round the way we did. And I think he had a little bit of we both had serious challenges. Like the kid I fought, he was 2-4, but the fight after I beat him, he went and fought bare knuckle and like broke the guy's orbital in the first round. So it's not like I was fighting a scrub by any means. The kid's like a very dangerous, like potentially violent striker. And Charles, of course, was fighting a very, very game opponent and for a championship or world title. So to have us both sort of like overcome pretty tough challenges and do it in the first round, and I always feel bad for my parents. They have to sit through it, and luckily, I think we made it a little less stress free, a little more stress free. I mean, than it usually is. So um, it was good, and it was really really special. Yeah.
Nice. I was there. That was the first fight I got
Oh
to watch
really?
of yours. Yeah,
Oh
it was
yeah.
such an awesome experience, and to end that night with Charles knockout was amazing. Did you get to watch that fight? Were you in the crowd there?
Yeah, no, so actually I went to right after. It was kind of a weird experience because normally you win and like I don't know, I like to just keep my hand wraps on and go like walk around and like see everyone and take pictures and stuff, and it's fun. I even like, I mean, it's kind of gross, but I'll still even eat a meal with the hand wraps on and stuff. But I decided like then I was like, well, I kind of went and said hi to some people, but I had to really go right back because I wanted to corner Charles. And it was pretty nerve wracking, honestly, because like you win and normally you get to have this catharsis, and then in this case I won, and I think I was more nervous for his fight than my fight. It was like because it's like you have less control over the situation, sort of. Um, so yeah, that was like really special, and then I think we all went right after and got to see all of our cousins and stuff. It was tough though. I tried to go to the after party that I think was actually like they had an after party in Charles's name, like or like the Rosa name or something. It was like the Rosa after party, and I tried to get into it with slipper. I had my sandals, my UFC sandals on, and my hand wraps still on. And they told me they're like, you can't come in here with with the sandals on. And because I don't go to clubs. I'm kind of an introverted person. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't even drink coffee or energy drinks like ever in my life, which people think is crazy, but it's true. And so, I mean, I definitely didn't know what the etiquette of a club was. So I got kicked out of my own after party. They wouldn't let me in. And so I had to go run back to this side of the casino and get shoes. So that was kind of a funny thing. My brother was like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "They wouldn't let me in." He's like, "What?" He was so mad. He's like, "What do you mean? He's just fought. They wouldn't let you in." I was like, "I don't know." So it's kind of a funny little anecdote, I guess, from the post fight. But yeah, the whole thing was just it was a really really special night. I got to have my twin brother Francis there, who's a very accomplished writer, and it's like it's cool to have all these different people from your hometown and your childhood, and I think like one thing I always say about fights that are really interesting is like they bring people together from different parts of your life that would never normally be there. Like unless it was a wedding or something like that. So the fact that, I think me and my brother are a way to sort of get all these people together and have like a fun, really memorable for some of them, like life experiences is pretty, you know, that's a special thing, I think.
Yeah. One of the first videos I made on YouTube was actually about you and your career. And in it, I talked about how well composed you are in the cage. Like, how do you prepare for a fight? Like, how do you mentally prepare when you step into the cage?
So I mean, I think people do see like, that um I mean, one of the things about the preparation is I always say this to people. I say, you know, a lot of the fear is in the preparation. Like I know going into a fight, like, the at some point I have to tell myself, you've done as much as you possibly could. And so now all there is left to do, there's no fear because all there is left to do is just go perform and do your best. Like you've prepared as much as you possibly could. I think if I went into fights feeling like I didn't prepare, like I wasn't training like obsessively every day like I do, then I would feel a little bit more like realistic fear and a little bit more whatever. But I'm so confident going in there because I know, you've done everything you possibly could. Like that sort of preparation is over with. Like now all you have to do, it's like your moment and you have to like feel that moment. And so, people kind of say it's almost like an alter ego type look about me. They I think you wouldn't really know how I am as a person from watching my walkout, because people say that I'm usually pretty polite and like respectful, but when I walk out, they say, that's I think that's kind of why I earned the moniker King of Monsters was like just the way I walk out is part of it. Like the demeanor I have is very scary and crazy looking and psychotic, and then once I'm in the ring it's like I'm just very like focused, like staring my opponent down and trying to think about all the steps to win. But yeah, I mean, I think part of walking into that cage, people, say like, "Oh, you look so angry," and to me, it's not really, it's not just anger. Like it's a collection of all these different emotions. It's like the sort of pride I have, and like the people, and like where I'm at, and like what I've come from to like be there, and it's the joy in seeing all the people that like came out to support me, and then also, yeah, there is a little bit of the anger from like, the past like traumas I've had in my life and trying to sort of um, reject the apathy that like, tough times tries to like put on you in life. And so I never want to be like an apathetic person. And so I think when I walk out like that and look crazy, it's sort of like a collection of all these different emotions, sort of like swelling into this one cathartic moment that I know is mine. And so like once I sort of have that like walk out and that sort of, you know, expelling of like the emotions, then I know like once in the cage, like it's my moment and it's time, and I'm so focused because I've prepared, and I've prepared with the best coaching, and I've prepared with an obsessive training regimen, and I don't think that's one thing I don't think people realize, like just how obsessive it is. Like I wake up every day and there's a piece of paper on my ceiling that says, now it says 5-0, but before it would say 4-0 or 3-0. It's the goal I have, set before me. And so it's the first thing I see when I wake up every day. Leading up to fights, I have nightmares about the fights. Like, it's so deeply ingrained in my psyche. Like, this is what I think about. This is what I do. Like, I eat, sleep, train, repeat. And it's in the pursuit of something that I think, a sport that I think imbues a lot of the virtues that I find meaningful, like courage and creativity and the willingness to learn, and most of all, heart, and courage. So
I mean, with all these first round finishes, if you string out a few more of these, do you believe you ever get the call to Bellator, LFA, or even like Dana White's Contender Series?
yeah, I mean, I honestly, I met Dana White. I happened to be at one of my cousin's wedding, and I met Dana White with Charles. We just happened to walk. We literally happened to run into him at the Encore. Like we were staying there, and it had nothing to do with a fight promotion. I think he was there maybe for the Bruins actually, and we like I remember Dana White just looked over and saw Charles like, yo, what the heck are you doing here? He recognized Charles immediately, which I thought was cool, because there's a lot of fighters on his card, but he knew who Charles was, and they started talking a little bit, and he introduced me to Dana White, and it was the first time I met him, and he said, maybe we'll see if, but you string a few more together, maybe we'll see about the Contender. That's what he said really about it. He didn't say, so I think that was like a promising thing. And, I obviously want to fight at the highest level against the best people in the world. And, whether it's the UFC or somewhere else, but, I think right now the UFC is still, has a lot of the best fighters in the world in it. So, I mean, I definitely, want to get to that level. I think I will get to that level. I mean, there's definitely some things that I feel like I would need to work on a little bit before I got to that point. But I mean, I knew from the get go once I went pro that this was kind of going to be the deal. That like my brother said, you could string a few wins together and then you could be getting a call in like a year and a half. Like, you ready like in 18 months to be fighting like UFC fighters? You know what I mean? And I understand the task of that. So that's why I train so obsessively, because it's not just about also staying prepared, because there's a difference between like preparing for fight training a little bit and like skill building. And so to me, I kind of feel like I'm trying to do those both simultaneously, which is a very tough ask sometimes. And that's why I think my solution to it has just been to fit the privates in and then also fit the normal fight training in. So it's just kind of like doubled my schedule almost, as much as possible. And luckily, I think I've been, with the way I treat my body, and I just sleep a lot more, and in between training sessions. And I think that sort of thing just helps me, so that, I've cut out pretty much anything that's not related to strictly like training and getting better, because that's really the only thing that matters to me in my life right now is getting better at MMA each day. So,
Well, I believe if there's anyone that can do it, it would be you. That's a pro right now. So I want to
okay.
thank you, Lucas Rosa, for joining the show.
Of course. Thank you so much, man. This is awesome. I really like the setup here, and I appreciate you saying all those nice things about me. And yeah, it's cool that I didn't know that I was one of the first ones you did a YouTube special on. So
Yeah.
that's really an honor. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for joining the show. And everyone who's watching, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll see you guys in the next interview or a video. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Cam. Thanks.